that is a really good, at least characterization of philosophy. That wonder is the lifeblood of philosophy. It starts in wonder, that's from Plato, I think, right?
Yeah. So the idea of the wonder philosophy connection, as I put it
Yeah.
in the book, that philosophy begins and is sustained and culminates in wonder, sort of wonder from beginning to end. It's a very, very classical notion, both Christian and non-Christian, although it predates the Christian tradition, this idea of wonder being what I'm calling the lifeblood of philosophy, to sort of borrow some language from Herman Bavinck. It really does. It starts in Plato. We find it in the Christian tradition, in thinkers like Aquinas and beyond. But yeah, it is a very big part of a more classically oriented view of philosophy. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that because there's been so much debate on whether or not the etymological definition or the etymology of philosophy really does capture the broad tradition and scope, the love of wisdom. And you can just like kind of sidestep that a little bit by saying, well, let's talk about wonder. Because do modern analytic philosophers, is it wonder that's driving their questions? It seems like it to me. Even like, does it capture a lot of the continental stuff? Yeah, like I wonder X, Y, or Z. So let me go spend some time on that. But maybe you are an analytic philosopher yourself. Is there some technical definition of wonder that we need to work with, or what do we mean? I guess. What can you characterize wonder for us that starts this all process?
Awesome. Great question. And I think that's the question that originally provoked me to further inquiry, right? That got me wondering about wonder, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you read about how central wonder is to the examined life, right? In antiquity and in the Christian tradition. And it was actually largely the work of some of my other friends in psychology that hit me off to. Been some really fascinating contemporary work, probably in the last 15 years in the psychological sciences about the nature of wonder or awe. Right. So I try to introduce some of that literature in the first chapter, an invitation to wonder, and just trying to draw on some of our best psychological science to actually like fill out the content of what is it to wonder, right? This is a uniquely human experience. It's a pervasive experience. I even mentioned people are paying a lot of money to chase experiences of awe and wonder, right? And I cite the example of space tourism. Wonder is fundamentally a human experience that, at least according to one leading proposal, and I'm attracted to this proposal, it involves two things: perceived vastness and a need for accommodation, right? So this idea of we perceive something as being beyond our current conceptual categories, right? So the vastness doesn't necessarily have to do with like physical size. It can involve like theoretical complexity or conceptual detail or conceptual magnitude, right? When you experience something, an idea or a physical object like the Grand Canyon, you're quickly realize the limitation of your current conceptual apparatus, basically your current conceptual framework, to sort of situate and locate the said object in question or the idea in question, right?
Yeah.
So that would be the idea of a perceived vastness. So there's something that's much bigger, quote unquote, bigger than the way that I currently grasp the world, or it's more complex than I currently grasp the world, right? That leads to the second thing, this need for accommodation, right? There's some sense in which, that's why we call it mind blowing, right? These experiences of awe and wonder, right? My conceptual categories are just too inadequate to the way things truly are, right? Whether that's about God or the natural world or some philosophical idea about the nature of human beings or the nature of time or the nature of justice or whatnot. So at least according to one leading proposal, awe or wonder, the psychology of awe or wonder involves both of those aspects, right? And there are, of course, certain awe elicitors in the literature. That's what they're called. Spiritual experiences, religious experiences, nature, the natural world is one of the most significant awe elicitors, according to current researchers. But I argue in the book, philosophy, and this is, again, I'm trying to connect wonder, the best contemporary psychological research on wonder, to this more classical idea in Plato and Aristotle and Aquinas that wonder is the beginning, and Heidegger, the beginning, the middle, and the end of philosophy. It's what propels and initially jumpstarts the philosophical life. It's what sustains it. It's not like you like leave it behind
Yeah.
once you start doing philosophy. It's at least when it's done properly, it's supposed to be ordered and sustained by wonder, and it culminates in wonder as well. And so I want to argue specifically for the Christian philosopher, right? Wonder should be a natural posture for us in the world as we navigate these conceptual issues. So, there's more to say about that, but that's the initial pass on what is wonder. Why is it a uniquely human experience in response to the world? But I'd say the main thing is that it reminds us when we experience wonder, it reminds us, Parker, that there are things that are much bigger and more complex about reality that we are currently aware of, right? And it has this sort of, as researchers say, it has this small self effect, right? It puts us in our proper place, right? Anyone who's visited the Grand Canyon, or even has witnessed the birth of a child, will experience the small self effect, right? And it's a sort of self transcendent emotion. Some other researchers have called wonder. It sort of pulls you out of the small confines of your own self and sort of puts you in the larger metaphysical and moral orbit of reality, that there are bigger goods and truths and aspects of reality that I'm bumping into here. And awe and wonder in effect isn't a response to those things. Like what is truly good and real about the world, we tend to elicit in us wonder or awe. So what I'm trying to do in those first two chapters is try to make that wonder philosophy connection, right? Philosophizing is one of these traditional ways that we respond to the world and try to fit ourselves into the world and make sense of the world.
Hey guys, thanks for watching that clip from the Parker's Pensées podcast. If you enjoyed it, leave me a like and drop a thinking emoji in the comments, or let me know what you thought. If you did enjoy it, if you learned something, you're going to love the full conversation on my channel, Parker's Pensées. Do you think we should be more worried about dumb AI or artificial general intelligence? Analytic continental divide. First of all, is that passe? What explanatory virtues does dualism have over panpsychism? What is a trope? What is a natural? What is naturalism? Thinking about the argument from contingency, and maybe how is that different than like Kalam cosmological arguments? Do our most fundamental maps of meaning actually correspond to something objective? Mind making, is that a derivative law of metaphysics, or is that fundamental to the universe? When you think of Philip K. Dick, do you think of him as a philosopher? Are you familiar at all with Penrose's use of Gödel in the philosophy of mind? But could he take my soul and put me in a desk? As we get closer to making the metaverse, does that make it more plausible that we're not in the good case? How is the simulation hypothesis different than brain in a vat or some form of idealism?